Chairman, sir, I was also in constant touch with my own counterparts in Ukraine, Russia, Poland, Romania, Hungary, Slovakia and Moldova for similar reasons. Foreign Secretary maintained contact with ambassadors of Ukraine and Russia in New Delhi, while our ambassador in Kiev and Moscow followed up with their respective capitals. Prime Minister deputed 4 union ministers as special envoys to Romania, Hungary, Slovak Republic and Poland to facilitate Operation Ganga. This included Shri Jyotiraditya Scindia to Romania, Shri Kiren Rijiju to Slovak Republic, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri to Hungary and General Shri VK Singh to Poland. Their personal supervision of the evacuation process made a substantial difference in the ease of border crossing and the care taken of our citizens thereafter. The most challenging part of the evacuation exercise was that of evacuating Indian nationals from Kharkiv and Sumy. Both the places witnessed heavy shelling and airstrikes. Many options were worked out to evacuate students through buses and trains. A team from our embassy in Moscow had also been sent to the Russia-Ukraine border to facilitate the possible evacuation of Indian students through Belgorod and Kursk. Many students from Kharkiv were moved to Pesochin in view of anticipated escalation of hostilities. While our efforts were able to stave off some of the more extreme scenarios, their presence in a safety zone allowed for subsequent ferrying through buses to the western borders. The Sumy evacuation, which was the last one on a significant scale, was also extremely complex as our students faced the prospect of being caught in crossfire. Their evacuation from the city needed a credible ceasefire, a daunting challenge in the current situation. This finally materialized, Chairman, sir, due to the personal intervention of the Prime Minister himself with the Presidents of Ukraine and Russia. Noting the extraordinary challenges before us, we also dispatched a special team of senior officers to the vicinity of Sumy. Their coordination with the military forces deployed there, with the ICRC and the arrangement of logistics was responsible for the final outcome. During the entire period, our embassy in Ukraine has been working incessantly to contact Indian nationals, arranging and facilitating transport, coordinating with local authorities, providing food, etc. Throughout the evacuation exercise, our embassy was in constant touch with the Ukrainian authorities. We appreciate their positive response to our requests during this period. Their intervention was responsible for running additional trains needed for the evacuation exercise. The embassy also provided travel documents within a very, very short time in cases where Indian nationals had lost their passports. They also partnered with neighboring embassies to resolve challenging situations on the border. On 13th March, in view of the rapidly deteriorating security situation in Ukraine, including attacks in its western part, it was decided to temporarily relocate the Indian embassy in Ukraine to Poland. This situation will be reassessed in light of further developments. Honourable members should also recognize the great contribution made by community representatives, volunteers and NGOs in the evacuation exercise. Equally noteworthy were the efforts of Indian businesses in the countries neighbouring Ukraine and indeed in Ukraine itself. In numerous ways, they assisted in the transport, shelter and sustenance of the evacuating students. They ensured that our citizens did not become a burden for Ukraine's neighbours who were receiving so many other refugees at that time. The nation owes them a debt. In line with India's principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, foreign nationals were also evacuated from conflict zones and brought to India. They included about 150 citizens, 147 to be exact, of 18 countries. Among them are immediate neighbours like Bangladesh and Nepal. Many of the Ukrainian nationals that were family members of Indian nationals have also been evacuated. We also provided free passage to Ukrainian nationals from India to Poland in our evacuation flights. In response to the emerging humanitarian situation, India has provided relief supplies to Ukraine and its neighboring countries. A total of 90 tons of relief material comprising medicines, tents, blankets, sleeping mats, tarpaulins, surgical gloves and eye goggles have been provided. Honourable members are aware that at Kharkiv, Naveen Shekharappa Gyangaudar, a final year medical student of Kharkiv Medical University, lost his life. He tragically succumbed to injuries received when he had gone to fetch groceries from a shop. We deeply mourn his untimely demise. Our prayers are with his family and his loved ones. Our embassy in Ukraine is diligently pursuing the repatriation of his mortal remains to India. I would also like to mention the assistance provided to another Indian national, Harjot Singh, who suffered bullet injuries on his way out from Kiev. His medical expenses were taken care of and arrangements made for his movement from Kiev to the Polish border. He was brought back in an IAF flight to India, accompanied by a doctor arranged by our mission in Poland. Chairman, sir, the unfolding developments in Ukraine have simultaneously played out in the United Nations, in particular the Security Council, where India is serving as a non-permanent member. India's position on the Ukraine conflict has been steadfast and consistent. We have expressed deep concern at the worsening situation and called for immediate cessation of violence and end to all hostilities. Our statements at the Security Council and the General Assembly have urged an urgent ceasefire and ensuring safe passage for stranded civilians. We have also highlighted the humanitarian assistance extended by India to Ukraine and its neighbours at this hour of crisis. We have reiterated at the highest levels of our leadership to all parties concerned that there is no other choice but the path of diplomacy and dialogue.